Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
I'm good, Alasdair. How you doing?
I'm very well. I'm actually exhausted.
It's been a
I'm,
week.
I'm amazing.
You're like, I'm doing just fine.
Is that a peppy introduction to this episode? I'm exhausted.
It wasn't a peppy intro, but you know what? Sometimes in life, there are days that are fillers. And sometimes when you're watching Series 1 of Doctor Who, there are also episodes that are fillers. And this is one of them.
This is big filler energy. It was a big filler for Russell. It's a big filler for us. It's amazing, isn't it? Sometimes in life, you're writing a series of a hit sci-fi and your best mate just drops out on you and says, I actually can't write this script. You do it. And and this is what you get. You get Boomtown.
Yeah. No, I mean, I look, I think that I can find the joy in pretty much anything, especially when it's like early Who, and there's a lot of fun to be had with this episode, but it is like undeniably, it's what I'd call like a bottle episode of a sitcom. It's using set that you've either already made or have easy access to. It's characters that you've already introduced. There's no real new concepts being brought to it. But hey, I think there's a bit of a fun romp to be had. And I also will say, I think that there is fun to be had in just watching like the Doctor and his companions having fun and like having a bit of a holiday. I think there's some fun
It's
there
a fun
too.
one.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's a bit of a day off for everyone. It's a character piece, and it's not the worst. It's fun.
Yeah.
And it does a lot for character building, team dynamics, sets up a finale very well. What I will say is I watched Doctor Who Confidential to prep for this instead of the episode, and they had nothing to say about this. Like, they had nothing to say about this. So much so that they turned it into a different, like, moral piece. They turned it into, like, normally it's like, it's about the thing that's happening.
Yeah.
It's about the episode. It's looking at the behind the scenes and so on. This one, they were like, today on Confidential, we explore, like, does the Doctor have the right to kill? And they did, like, a montage of all the times the Doctor has killed people.
Right.
And they went back in time and they did like how campaigners have been like outraged by Doctor Who for being violent at different points in time. They had interviews with Peter Davidson and Colin Baker talking about all the people that they'd murdered on screen, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I remember they got angry. I think I, pushed someone into a bath of acid or something, and I made some rather flippant comment." And then it cuts to the episode,
Right.
from like the 70s, and he's like, I won't join if you don't mind. And he was like, yeah, they didn't like that. But and then Peter Davidson's like, absolute nonsense, as if kids can't tell, the world of sci-fi make-believe apart from, they're more scared of what's on the news. They're terrified of what's on the news, not what I'm doing, running around. And so I was like, what is happening? This is not Boomtown. This is great, but this is not.
Do you know what? They probably had more fun doing that one. They were like, look, this is a low-key episode of Doctor Who this week. You can kind of do what you want. You can go on a run. What do you want to do? To the editors. And the editors are like, I know what I want to do.
There's one clip of Peter Davidson, and then they cut to another one. And I think it's just archive footage because he's got a completely different haircut. It's like there's years between the two clips. So I think they were like, shit, get into the BBC archive right now and find anything you have that we can stitch together for this week.
Well, look, I think that it's an episode of many levels, and it was also an episode of no levels whatsoever.
Well, it's funny because they try and really like, in Confidential, they try and almost push this as like one of the most deep and complex ones, as if it's like, ooh, like finally the Doctor's having to face his consequences. Finally, he can't run away this time. This time he's stuck looking, looking his decision in the eyes, and he has to decide, like, does he have the right to kill his enemy? Ooh. And I don't know, was it that deep? Because, well, in the end, he didn't. We'll get to this. That's another Wholala catchphrase. We'll get into this.
We'll come
but
back
he doesn't have to. There is no moral choice. She regresses into an egg, and it's resolved. But
I think that similar with the Doctor Who magazine now, Russell had a lot to say in what was happening around Who. We do know that with the new series, we're going to be getting somewhat of a Doctor Who Confidential style show. And I think Russell's very involved in it. And I have, in doing my reading for this episode, seen that Russell intended the episode to be a bit more of a character piece about the Doctor exploring whether he had the authority to take someone's life and like take them to their death sentence, as well as exploring the consequence of the Doctor's actions the last time that he met the Slitheen, and kind of the fact that there aren't many episodes. This is sort of like a spiritual sequel to Aliens London World War III. And I will argue, I'd say that this, in part, like, I like this episode more in ways that I didn't like the other episodes, I think. And it is
Okay.
interesting to have the Doctor come back to an adventure that he'd had previously and really face the consequence of that. I think when villains like the Daleks and the Cybermen and the Master come back, often they kind of forget the last time they saw them. And it's like, right, here's a new story with this villain. Whereas with this one, more so than any of the others, I think, he really does have to say, oh, that thing I did. Well, this, to be fair, this whole season is like that. I think the finale then after this is a consequence of the long game. And this whole series is a lot about the Doctor dealing with his consequences.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, it's funny. On rewatch, I remember this being quite camp and quite funny. On rewatch, it felt more like a filler than I remembered. And maybe it's just now that we've grown up a bit, it's more transparent how they've cut corners a little bit to pull this together.
Well, for the people who may not have revisited Boomtown in a while, should I go through a quick plot recap?
Please.
So, Boomtown aired on the 4th of June 2005, and this episode was written by Russell T Davies and directed again by Joe Ahern. Joe has directed loads of episodes in this series. To summarise the episode, the TARDIS crew meet Mickey Smith in Cardiff, where they're using the rift to refuel the TARDIS. They soon learn that Margaret Blaine, one of the last surviving members of the Slitheen family, has become mayor and is planning on building a nuclear power station in the heart of the city. They capture Margaret and learn that she was hoping to use the power plant to free the rift and ride the wave into space using the extrapolator. So they bring her back onto the TARDIS and tell her that she can face punishment on her home world of Rax Coracophala Pretorius. They try and use the extrapolator to speed the TARDIS refuel, but instead create a rupture in space, with Margaret using the chaos to try and escape before the TARDIS blows up, taking Earth with it. The Doctor shows Margaret at the heart of the TARDIS, and it regresses her into an egg. They stop the explosion, and before they head off to take her home, Rose realises Mickey is no longer with them. He's left her behind, as he will always be second to the Doctor.
Nice. Thank you, Sam. That was really special.
It was almost like watching it again.
It was like I was there.
Like I was there on Cardiff Bay.
Like I was there on Cardiff Bay. Now, you've not been to Cardiff Bay, have you?
I haven't. I was actually going to ask you, how did you feel as a regular visitor of Cardiff and Cardiff Bay? How did you feel about watching this episode?
Yeah, I've talked about this a few times, but it's great. You go to Cardiff and you're basically on the set of Doctor Who. It's very exciting because it featured so prevalently in Torchwood and several series of Doctor Who, actually. They moved away from it, I feel, later on. I feel like they used it much more heavily in series 1 to 4 as Cardiff. I could be wrong.
I think that Russell really pushed for... He knew that he was filming it in Cardiff, and he wanted to show the area and sort of showcase what Wales had to offer. And I know that they continued to film in Cardiff once Stephen Moffat took the reins, and then it was later I think they started reaching out into more areas and filming up north, and now I think it's a bit, I know they're still based in Wales, but with the newer series I see them filming in London and filming in Bristol and filming like a lot more around.
Well, it's funny, I think it's actually very minimal still. They did some recent scenes with Millie Gibson. They dressed some streets in Clifton in Bristol as London. So I don't think they film in London very often at all and they can avoid it.
Yeah.
And I think they dressed a lot of Newport High Street recently to look like London again.
Yeah.
So I think wherever they can, they avoid it because I guess it's expensive. It's difficult to get the permits. But also I think they want to keep the filming local for local jobs, the local economy. It is BBC Wales that are producing it. So it makes sense. But yeah, it's amazing. I mean, if you go to Cardiff, we'll go together sometime. I'll take you around. We'll have a look. There'll be Doctor Who tours we can do. We can probably do a self-guided one.
Two things I'll say about this episode. One, Rose's outfit is the high level of camp that I don't think we really get to see from Rose. I love this outfit. I love her little pigtails. I love the really long, colourful scarf. I love the mini skirt, even though it's absolutely freezing and clearly cold. I think it's so camp. The other thing I'll say about Rose is, my God, why hasn't she officially broken up with Mickey Smith yet?
There's a great scene inside this, though, that explores that. And actually, that's probably one of the few highlights for me. So I agree with you, first of all.
Mickey's new girlfriend.
Yeah, I actually love that scene. I think it's really good. I actually really, really, really like that bit. First of all, I think Rose's outfit is great. I really like the denim skirt. I think also she goes double denim. I think it's a denim jacket as well, and it's a nice long multicolored scarf. It's a look.
It's a look.
And then some tights and some little black boots.
Yes, she's got little black boots. The black tights, yeah, double denim, but not matching denim. And the really like loose knitted scarf. It's just like I love Rose in both series sort of has a signature hairstyle. She has the really sort of, I'd say, long, one might argue flat hair in series 1. And then it's a bit more voluminous, short, not a read, just a fact, voluminous sort of shorter hair in series 2. But I love the episodes where she does something different with it. So in this one, it's like the plaited pigtails. I love in Tooth and Claw when she has the curly hair. I love in
that was a good one.
I love in The Long Game when she has it like in a messy updo. Like, oh, I love it.
I like as well at the end of New Earth when they go back to Cassandra's party before she had her flattening surgeries and she has her high pony.
I love it.
I think that's very
Well,
gorgeous.
do you know why they did that?
No.
I believe because of scheduling and everything, they filmed that around the same time they did School Reunion and Tooth and Claw, because they always filmed 2 episodes together. So Billy had curly hair at that time because she was filming those episodes.
That can't be the reason. As if they didn't have time to straighten her hair.
Look at the picture. Look at the picture.
They're like, listen, we're doing this block. And she was like, but I curled my hair. Oh my God, that's going to stay for weeks. She couldn't wash it.
But it would have taken out a lot of the time. It would have taken a lot of the time.
You're right. It would have taken a good half an hour to wash her hair. They couldn't have. You're right.
Girl.
Girl, are we fighting? Are we having a fight?
I'm looking at the photo right now. She has curled hair.
Yeah. I don't think that's a filming issue.
Well,
I don't think that's for scheduling.
What do you think that she ran away from Cassandra and then before they dumped her off, she curled her hair?
I think she did. I think she was like, we're going to a classy party. And she said, give me a moment.
Moving back to Boomtown.
Moving back to Boomtown. What was the second thing you liked apart from Rose's outfit?
Sorry. No, those were the 2 things. The first thing is her outfit. The second thing is she needs to break up with Mickey Smith. Like Trish from the shop, let Mickey have Trish. I'm sure they're having a lovely relationship back on the Powell estate. And she gets so jealous, despite the fact that since we last saw Mickey, she's tried it on with Adam. She's tried it on with Jack. She then got annoyed at Jack for being so like polyamorous and queer. And yet she still keeps Mickey around and gets jealous if he dates anyone.
So she is being a little mean here, but I do like that we see the consequence for Mickey here. I think is really great. The kind of really difficult position she's left him in. And yeah, she is being selfish, but I think we said before, we quite like the flawed character of Rose and that she is being a little selfish. We like the way that's written. I really like the way this is explored as well. So I think a few things happening here. One is a little show off for the Mermaid Quayside on Cardiff Bay, which is looking super lovely at this time of night. I imagine they probably film this at like 4 a.m. or something.
I actually heard that while they were filming this, because obviously they were filming it at night, it got so cold they had to extend, I think, filming by 2 days because the fountain automatically turns off if it gets to a certain temperature. And 2 days in a row, it kept turning off because it was just too cold and they needed the fountain on for the shots.
There's that. The dialogue here I think is great. One thing I really like about this dialogue is Rose explains his other adventures she's been on with the Doctor that we haven't seen. And she's talking about like, oh, we walked across this beach with no people. It was like 1,000-mile beach. And
I love the name as well, Woman Wept.
Yeah, Woman Wept. And it was like the ocean was like frozen in the middle of a storm with waves and foam all the way to the horizon. And we walk underneath these waves that are 100 feet tall. They're all made of ice. And then Mickey's just like, I'm going out with Trisha Delaney. And then it's just like silence. And she's like, right.
She's like, Trisha from the shop.
Trisha from the shop. She's like, well, that's nice. She's a bit big.
She's a bit big.
Oh,
Rose.
She's like, she lost weight.
She really is from 2005.
I know. She's body shaming Trisha. It's a few things happening at once, right? Mickey's like, this is my only bit of news. This is all I have. And there's nothing else I can use to impress you. He's like, I've got nothing to counter this with apart from try and make you a little bit jealous with a girl I don't even like that much. And it's the way it rattles Rose as well. Like, despite the story she's telling, it still hurts her a little bit to think that Mickey might have moved on, even with someone that she doesn't really feel jealous about. And I like that because that feels very human and that feels very real.
I think that it's little moments like this where you really get glistens of Russell's best writing where, as we've said before in other episodes, I think a lot of other companions tend to be written like these perfect characters that say the perfect thing and feel the perfect thing in the moment. And I think that little thing, I'm going out with Trisha Delaney, it really like halts Rose in her tracks, and she then in the later scenes she's thinking about it, and like she's distracted by what he's saying, and then he like is trying to keep conversation, kind of snaps him, and it's been like chewing on her mind, because that's what would happen. I think even if you knew that you weren't romantically interested in your ex-boyfriend anymore and it had never really been cleared up, so they've started seeing someone else, you would be thinking about it when they suddenly told you, and like they never had a conversation of like, so where are we now, what are we doing? It's just become clear what their relationship's become, and it just suddenly brings her right back to the real world. And I think that is such a well written moment, because she's like 19. This is how you'd react, I think, if you were 19.
Of course it is. It's like a real relationship drama, and I really like that. There are bits of his writing this one I don't love so much. This bit I do love though, and I like the emotion that it's played with as well. I like that he tears up and he's talking about kind of, you left me, and there's a point where I think he actually breaks and starts to cry, and it's around the like, I can't even go out with some girl from the shop because the second you ring, I'll come running. And he starts to like well up at that. And
he says, you made me feel like nothing, Rose. I was nothing.
Yeah. I love it. Drama. The bit of writing I don't love so much, that is also very Russell T Davies, and it's very soap, is what do they call this style? Hang on. Generally. Oh, this is it. They say, you know what he does? He does kitchen sink realism or kitchen sink drama, which is when people like depict the daily struggles of ordinary working class people. That's his style. So people say that series 1 is a kitchen sink drama in some ways.
How so in this episode?
Margaret is threatening Kathy, who is a reporter for the Cardiff Gazette, in the bathroom. And she's planning to attack her, and she's saying, are you going to go public with this information? And then she says something like, mind you, my boyfriend thinks I'm mad. We're getting married next month, and I've got a baby on the way. And she's like, you're with child? And then, I don't know, there's something about the like...
Wasn't meant to happen. It was an accident. Nice accident, though.
Yeah, nice accident, though. Jeffrey, civil servant. He's nothing exciting, but he's mine. Like, it's so like, just it slightly cringes me out a little bit. This type
I
of
do
writing.
see what you mean. It's like you wouldn't be spieling every like aspect of your personal life story and then all the backstory to that as well to this person, which is the exact right thing to say in that exact right moment. And I get that.
It's very, I mean, I don't hate it. It's very distinctly his style, right? The way he writes characters and, throwing these little ordinary details from their lovely, ordinary little simple lives. And, it's not much, but it's what we've got. And it's very
I do think the show needs that at points. I think I do get what you
does.
mean about that scene in particular, but like in this big fantastical show where you can go anywhere and anything can happen, I think you do need odd moments of like grounding, where sometimes he'll go too far with it, but this scene is just funny where she just goes on and on about her boyfriend and her pregnancy and this and that, and it's like, you're in the toilet talking to the mayor.
Talking to the mayor. There's that other bit that reminds me of it as well, like in the Planet of the Dead or something, and he's like, where were you going on this bus? And so, we were going home, some chops and gravy, most important thing in the world. Like, I don't know what. It's a very distinctive style. I'm definitely not saying it sucks, because it doesn't, but it's very recognizable.
No, but I think we tend to always look at Russell with like such rose-colored glasses as well. You do remember that, like with any writer, there are moments where the writing's not so good, and then there are bits that we love. And I think that certainly and I think both of us can be blind to nostalgia at times. I think we have to every so often take ourselves out, because it's so easy to be like, Russell is the best showrunner, and like saying the soundtracks, it's like Murray Gold is the best artist, but then there, everyone has peaks and everyone has valleys.
Of course they do. And I'm not saying it's even a Russell Valley, but this might be a Russell Valley. This episode might be a Russell Valley.
One thing that I love in this episode is the chase where the Dr. Jack, Rose, and Mickey are all in different points of the mayor's office, and they're all trying to stop Margaret running away. And while she's running, she's unclipping bits of her necklace, unclipping bits of her earrings.
Oh, yeah.
Because it makes up a little personal teleport. And then there's that scene where she's running away and she blips away, and Jack's like, no, she's got to teleport. Now we'll never find her. That's cheating.
Yes.
And Rose is just like, oh, the doctor's good at teleports. And he just sonics her back like 3 times. And then she says, this is harassment. This isn't fair. What did I ever do to you? And he's like, you tried to kill me and destroy this whole planet. And she goes, apart from that.
I love this too. It's silly, it's slapstick. Again, I love that line.
Really
I love the way
is.
they describe it. Like, oh, the doctor's good at teleports. There's like a little hint there that there's adventures happening off screen that we don't get to see all the time. Because I don't think we saw a teleport before this, did
No,
we?
I was thinking when I was reading into this episode, I think someone said that it was a callback to when he teleported Cassandra back in the End of the World.
Oh.
But other than that, like I don't think that warrants very good at teleports. I think that it
Maybe.
alludes to other adventures we might not be seeing.
For me, it alludes to other adventures, but that is a good example. But I like it because, as well, at the same time as this, we were both reading the Doctor Who books, right? Did you have the hardbacks?
Yeah, I did.
So
Yeah.
I think that made it all feel more believable for me reading those books in year 4 or whatever it was. It was like, oh yeah, these are the adventures that were happening on the side. For me, this is important to me. In year 4, the canon matters. I need to believe that these stories could have happened, and that built it for me.
Exactly. No, I think that we touched on it last week with expanded media. There's a lot of stuff that isn't on screen. I think the Doctor Who canon is silly and flexible, and things can get rewritten and whatever. And I think that you're very aware that companions and the Doctor are having adventures together you don't get to see, and then also the Doctor goes on adventures without the companion sometimes. And I kind of, especially when watching Russell's era, I really felt like we always saw the companion and the Doctors together, and I couldn't imagine the Doctor doing anything by himself. And then I actually grew to like in Stephen Moffat's era when the Doctor would go on like a one-off by himself and Amy and Rory might stay behind, or there'd be like a Christmas episode where he was going off on this adventure and then maybe come back to them at the end of the episode. And so then when in the Doctor Adventures magazine that I got, they'd have a lot of comics, and when it was in between series, or say in the year of specials where the Doctor didn't have a set companion, they would write a new companion in and have that companion for 6 months worth of issues. And it was fun to think that maybe the Doctor has companions we don't know. Frobisher the Penguin, we keep
Frobisher
coming
the
back to him.
Penguin.
Frobisher the Penguin.
Pay him his dues.
Pay him his dues, honey. But yeah, I think that's fun.
People have been joking about Frobisher the Penguin a lot on Twitter at the moment. You know, when they put up the mural in the Bad Wolf studios of Shutigawa,
Yeah.
people were like, oh my God, I can't believe they confirmed it. And it was like a mural of Frobisher on the same wall. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe they've announced this.
I mean, he's bringing back Beep the Meep. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised. I think Frobisher, I don't think he'd be like a full companion, but I think it's definitely a throwaway comment away.
I'd love to say, we have the budget, but we found out the budget isn't as big as we thought it was.
I was
At one point, it
devastated.
was rumored to be that kind of 10 mil an episode, and then Russell had to row back a little bit in Doctor Who magazine and was like, hey guys, just to manage expectations, it's not 10 million an episode, just to nip that one.
Exactly, no. But I mean...
So no penguins?
I'm thinking, they can just comp in a claymation penguin from Creature Comforts and call it a day. I mean,
That would be funny as hell. That'd be better, because we're dealing with all of time and space and every parallel reality and all the weirdness and wackiness that comes with it. Claymation penguin, why not?
Well, Doctor Who can go into the multiverse of madness, and there's a world somewhere where everyone's made out of plasticine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
One thing I really liked about this episode is we get to see a little bit more of the kind of mysterious and living nature of the TARDIS. I think is always very cool. So I think I've said to you before, the TARDIS, I kind of, because I'm cool and different, I consider it to be a character.
I think loads of people consider it was a woman in one episode.
Yeah, the TARDIS is a character.
Yeah.
And I love when we get to get a little nibble of TARDIS lore, because it doesn't have to make sense, because it's kind of what does Margaret call it in this episode? She's like, this is like the machinery of the gods or something like that. And it is. She's right. 2 of my favorite episodes actually are Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, because we get this very cool look at some of the things we've never seen before. I think we get to see the Eye of Harmony. We get to see the collapsing, suspended black hole that's powering the TARDIS is very cool. We get to see the TARDIS's kind of defense mechanisms, where it tries to scare them from the engine by disguising itself as a cliff edge.
Yeah.
Like a wounded animal snarling. You get to see the exploded engine room, which is all these kind of 2D prints layered around this huge studio. Very cool. And the other episode I love is The Doctor's Wife. I think this is probably one of the best ever. This one's done by Neil Gaiman, and the TARDIS is put inside a human body, and briefly the Doctor and the TARDIS can talk to each other, which is really lovely. But yeah, I love whenever we get a bit of TARDIS magic.
Yeah. One thing that I noted when watching this episode is exactly the same thing. I do love when we get to see more of the TARDIS and learn more about it. But I think that even with all those episodes, there's so much we don't know, and so much that I don't necessarily think we need to be told. And I think this episode does the perfect job of alluding to the fact that the TARDIS is this living being. It's a character. It is its own entity, and you can hurt it and it can fight back. And I think that then it sets up well in the finale of this season when Rose breaks the TARDIS open to force it to help her, what the consequences of that become.
Yes, and one of Russell's defenses in The Confidential that I watched of the conclusion of this episode was, well, actually, we have already alluded to the fact that the TARDIS is psychic and that you develop a psychic link with it as soon as you come inside. But the way he described it was interesting because I had kind of imagined that was more of a link really between the Doctor and the TARDIS. And that everyone else just kind of got a few perks of being a companion in the TARDIS. Like they get the translation matrix and that sort of thing. And that was kind of where it ended. And that the TARDIS is predominantly a machine, but with kind of a living element to it. But Russell describes it and says it actually reads your mind and it could kind of understand Margaret's intentions and it kind of intervened to help save the day. And it looked into Margaret's head and decided she deserved a second chance, essentially, which is really interesting because it kind of creates the idea that the TARDIS can make a judgment on its own, which is interesting, and that it can actually step in and change things.
I heard a similar thing where one take on it as well is that when Margaret looks into the heart of the TARDIS, the Doctor says, you looked into the heart of the TARDIS and the TARDIS looks into the heart of you. And not only is it about the TARDIS making a judgment, but it's that the TARDIS looks inside her and sees that she wants a second chance. She wants to have a go at life again. And then it sort of grants her that wish. It has the power to travel through time. So it then uses that power to bring her back in time and regress her to an egg. And it's not just making a judgment in itself, it's also taking into consideration what she wants.
Everything you said was so poetic up until and regress her into an egg, as if that was a perfectly sensible thing to happen. It was like,
exactly.
Yeah, it looked into her soul and it saw all the things she could be across time and space and all the other realities. And
then it made her into an egg.
And she was an egg.
We'll do fun facts at the end as always, but do you want a quick fun fact about the egg?
Please. Oh, I know this one.
Well, we probably got our fun fact from the same place this week.
I'm like, I know this one, and then I don't say it. It's a prop, right? It's a reused prop from Van Statten's museum. This whole episode is a rehash.
Wait. You're half right.
What? Only half?
It's a reused prop. It's one of the eggs from The End of the World. He cracks the ostrich egg.
Yeah.
I think it's a repurposed prop that was the ostrich egg from The End of the World.
Oh, it wasn't. Oh, so they literally glued some other bits on it.
They painted, because they would have had, there obviously was one that they cracked, but it was one that they painted and did up and made into an alien egg.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? Good for them. I didn't notice. But I was 8, so what did I notice?
Exactly.
Ooh, this also sets up the finale quite nicely, with the whole kind of heart of the TARDIS thing and, looking into the time vortex and the bad wolf and so on and such. But yeah, it's nice. I mean, the TARDIS is my favorite character, right? It gets explained, I think, at some point that maybe it gets explained in The Doctor's Wife that the reason the TARDIS kind of behaves erratically isn't just a broken navigation system, but it's that the TARDIS has an element of choice. And just as the Doctor chose to run away with that TARDIS, the TARDIS also kind of chose the Doctor to run away with. And that the Doctor doesn't always go where he wants to go, but the TARDIS always takes him where he needs to go. So kind of also gives an explanation for why every time they land, there's always trouble and danger and death, is because actually the TARDIS deliberately steers him towards situations where he's needed, where he can change things. So that's kind of a nice two-way explanation, right?
I love it. No, exactly. It's always taking him where he needs to go and where he's needed. I love it.
Yeah. And I really, really love that. So anyway, yeah, I love it. It's a silly, silly ending that the skin suit kind of flaps to the floor and there's this reused egg prop inside it. I mean, they must have been watching this in the edit room like, does this work?
Literally. I wonder if there was ever a point they were watching this back and they were like,
guys, and the drama control of the BBC is there and they're like, Russell, this is not your best work.
He did what he could do. Well, speaking of, let's talk a little bit about what this episode could have been if it had originally gone to the original plan.
Oh, yeah. I know that the original writer was unavailable and I've forgotten his name, but he is a writer for Shameless.
So back in 2005, Russell T Davies was doing an interview for Doctor Who magazine, and he mentions that he had another script that was originally being drafted for this episode. It was being written by Paul Abbott, and yes, like you said, Paul Abbott is a writer for Shameless, and he said that the storyline that he was originally thinking of writing was an episode set in Pompeii, where Rose is jealous of the Doctor and Jack getting very close, and then Jack uncovers the fact that the Doctor secretly bred Rose as a psychic experiment to create his perfect companion. And it's all about that discovery and how the whole season have been leading up to this moment.
Yeah, I mean, don't say secretly bred.
You have to say publicly bred.
Also, this doesn't make sense to me because it can't have progressed beyond a concept because it doesn't tie in with anything before or after this. So it doesn't really even lead into the finale because there's nowhere it would have fit that made any sense unless the Doctor had kind of also resolved it with Rose at the point that he saved her, like Rose, my weird experiment baby. Coming to get you.
I don't know how long they were floating this. Well, apparently he had been writing this idea for 3 weeks before he dropped out and said, I can't commit to this. I think that Shameless was taking up too much of his time and he said, I can't commit to writing this episode. But Russ was quoted in saying, "You've just ruined my character. Thank you very much. Haha." But he would have made it brilliant because he's the best writer in the world. Not going to lie, from reading this, I think there's a bit of Russell that was like, oh, thank God he didn't get to write that episode.
I simply don't think it would have ever progressed beyond concept. I to be honest, on some level, I think this is a joke because I just don't think this could have been placed in the season. It just doesn't make sense because Russell wrote the Rose and Doctor dynamic as a love story, and this drives a horrible, ugly, scary wedge in the middle of it. And as interesting as that is now to look back on as a kind of what if, it would have been really bizarre then, and
it just would have been horrible.
The character of the Doctor, it would have been a horrible twist. So I don't think this was ever really going to happen.
It never should happen. I agree with you. I don't think that it would have ever really come to fruition. I do think that they would have adapted some kind of script from Paul Abbott. I think a Pompeii episode would have been fun. Obviously, we then later saw that in The Fires Pompeii, especially as it was something that Jack had previously referenced in the series about Vesuvius and Pompeii. But I do think that then it changes the Doctor's dynamic. I think the only interesting thing I really think about it is that the Doctor, the wider audience who watched the show in the classic series would know, was the Doctor that would always help people, and he's always known for good. And there would be this twist as to the war really changed him. The war changed him more than we as the audience.
Really changed him. No, that's as silly. It's too silly. It's too silly. I don't endorse.
No, I know. It is. I don't endorse. I think that it's interesting concept to see how much the war really changed him and how he really needs someone to just be his friend. But maybe that is just,
so
making a friend.
badly. Also, how does Jackie play into this? What made him decide that the Immaculate Birth would be via Jackie Tyler? I'm not. What was this?
Well, I mean, who am I to say that Jackie Tyler isn't the perfect candidate for the Immaculate Birth?
The Mary of the Doctor Who universe.
Oh my God, Jackie Tyler is the Virgin Mary.
She is. And I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, much as we were joking about it being a filler episode, which it is, I would rather have the filler episode of Boomtown than whatever that was going to be.
That, I don't believe it ever would have happened. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, shut up.
Well, the main reason that they end up, I think, obviously Paul Abbott was originally going to write the script and then they changed it and Russell wrote it, but the main reason they made it such a bottle episode as they did is that they wanted to try and save money for the two-part finale. They wanted that to be as big of a spectacle as they could, so they were like, okay, well, if we save money in episode 11, then we can put that towards episodes 12 and 13. And I also think it was smart, I mean, we'll talk about this next time, but using the sets that they have in episode 12 and 13, they already built them for the long game. So they're reusing sets again in there. As we previously discussed, The End of the World took up a lot of the budget for this series as a whole. So I think for a big spectacle of the finale, they then had to cut corners where they could, and that meant making filler episodes and other episodes, reusing sets in those episodes. And I think these 3 episodes as a little package. I think of them as a package in my head because I used to buy the DVD volumes, and volume 4 of series 1 was Boomtown, Parting of the Ways, and Bad Wolf. And I think that we still got 3 good episodes out of it,
We did, that's true. How do we feel about the Slitheen returning? We talked about this before. I think you'd love them back, wouldn't you?
I would love them back. It was actually, I was thinking about this a moment ago. We both came away from watching Aliens of London and World War III thinking, this wasn't the best episode. This was a bit silly. And we both come away from this episode thinking, this was a bit of a filler episode. Could have done without it. What is it about the Slitheen that I still really want them to come back?
There's something about, I think, maybe a Slitheen that isn't evil. I mean, I know the Slitheen's the family, not the species, but
yeah,
I think there's something maybe compelling about, I think if you remove the bodysuit element, the design entices me, it endears me. The big kind of black saucer eyes and the teeny tiny mouth and the massive puffy cheeks, it endears me.
It's a weird baby face.
It's a baby face. And I think now that it's kind of coming up on kind of 15, 20 years old, it's now kind of taking on kind of a classic look for me. And I don't know, I just kind of want to see how that would be reimagined now as well. What can you do to that now?
In the same way that when they brought the Jadoon back for Jodie's era, they completely remade the face. They didn't just take the old Jadoon face and either stick some hair on it or just use the same one again. They completely resculpted it. And I think they made subtle changes, but, you know, technology advances, skills advance, materials advance, even within the short space of, like, you know, David Tennant series, Jodie Whittaker's. I would be really interested to see how they would ever so slightly redesign the Slitheen. They could, even if they wanted to, because like you said, the Slitheen are a family of Raxacoric
Sure.
In the same way that when they brought the Ice Warriors back, they changed the design, so they updated it. Enough time has passed, I think, that you could update the Slitheen design, you could change it, and I wonder how they do that.
Give us a new one. I'm ready for it.
And also, I just love the Slitheen and the Sarah Jane Adventures, but I think they're such a camp little villain for the kids series, so I think that's fun.
They really are. That's maybe where they belong next. Just keep them on kids' TV.
In The Adventures of Ace and Tegan.
Yeah, that'd be fine. They can handle that.
Yeah, for sure. Should we move on to some fun facts?
Go on, give me some fun facts, please.
So in the opening scene before the credits, we see Mr. Cleaver, who is played by William Thomas. Now, William Thomas had previously appeared as Martin the Undertaker in Doctor Remembrance of the Daleks in 1988. He then came back in Torture, which you may recognise him more, as Geriant Cooper, who is the father of Gwen Cooper.
I actually watched Remembrance of the Daleks recently. Great episode. And he's in it. And I think I might have sent you a little screenshot saying Gwen's dad. But if I didn't, he is in that.
You did. You spot him as Gwen's dad. And this also brings him into a club of a very few actors. Peter Capaldi is one of them, to play 3 different characters in the Doctor Who universe.
Oh, well. Sorry, my reaction was weird there.
It took me by surprise.
Oh!
I actually ran through most of my fun facts during this episode. However, one that I think
this is just like Doctor Who Confidential, when they ran out of fun facts and they had to come up with a different topic.
Just like Doctor Who Confidential, we are running thin on the ground for fun facts here. However, one thing that's interesting is, again, in Classic Who, in 1982, there was an episode called The Visitation. And in there, the Fifth Doctor similarly was told by an alien criminal that if he returns them home, that would result in his death. And in that episode, the Doctor offered to take the criminal to a different planet to avoid their death sentence. And this then shows the Doctor's growth and regression, maybe, since the Time War, as to the fact he was so quick and happy to send Margaret to her death.
Well,
Alasdair, this episode, was it camp or was it damp?
It was camp. Woo!
Undeniably
Finally,
camp, I'd say.
It makes it safely into the camp. So, yeah, well,
welcome to the camp.
Claps for Boomtown.
Snaps
you made it. You scraped by.
Snaps for the camp.
By the skinny or big Slitheen claws.
And this nearly takes us to the finale of Series 1.
God, we're going to have to think of some sort of big drum up for that, aren't we?
I know, we're going to have to think of an event.
Yeah, or indeed, as they did broadcast, just a little countdown.
Yeah, that's the thing. We'll tweet a little countdown towards the episode. But before then, we'll have another fun topic episode next week. Alasdair, do you want to tell everyone where they can find us?
Yes, please do check us out at Wholala Pod on Instagram and Twitter. We post there all the time these days. And it's me and Sam both posting at the same time, so it's carnage. But the content's actually quite good.
You can also find us on our YouTube channel, also at Wholala Pod, where we repost old episodes of the podcast, as well as fun little videos that you can enjoy.
Lame.
But yeah, thank you for joining us on this lame. Lame. But yes, thank you for joining us on this episode of Wholala Doctor Who podcast, and we look forward to having you with us next week.
Can't wait to see you.
Goodbye.